We're back with another crowd control where we talk about everything happening in board game crowdfunding. We've got a few that are running this week and one that is launching.
Yeah, this is Ice Unlimited. This is the second edition of the game. Ice, if you remember a few years ago, I actually did a video on this, and I remember that it was a very ambitious game. In fact, it's this multi-layer set of trays that connect together to form a giant pit, and that pit is filled with tiles, and you kind of dig through those tiles to collect artifacts and things that were buried from the previous civilization. And I will say that that game was plagued with some problems. It had some issues with production. It had some issues with delivery. But I remember saying back at the time that I thought they were being very forefront about what happened and all the issues they had. So they've kind of taken some of that experience and they've brought it back to a brand new edition, which they're going to approach with all the knowledge of the mistakes they made on that first edition. But they're not just reprinting it. This is actually a newly thought out game. It shares mechanics, but they are introducing a variety of new concepts, mechanics, and even components to the game as well.
Yeah, even their campaign actually has this nice sort of setup. I don't know how many campaigns are doing this these days, but right at the very top it says, if you're new to the campaign, go over to the menu and click, I'm new to the campaign.
Yeah.
If you've played Ice or you have Ice, go and click that button. It basically takes you to a section of their page to tell you right away, okay, here's what's new, here's what you need to do, here's the pledge you're looking for. If you're new to Ice, I assume it's just going to say, hey, buy everything. But
sure.
It's a really nicely done thing, and it is nice that they come back after all this time, giving it a lot of thought, and hopefully hitting the ground running and really running it really smoothly.
And they're very honest on their page, and they're saying, hey, here's what we learned, and here's how we're approaching this, and here's how we're doing things differently, who we've brought onto the team to smooth out some of the rough edges that they had during the original production. So I'm not always optimistic about campaigns that come back for second editions like this, but I am feeling pretty good about this one.
Yeah, I think it'll do well. Another one, this one didn't launch this week or isn't launching. It launched last week. It's Neon Rain. We've already done some content. Last Tuesday, we did a live stream, sort of an impromptu live stream.
It was a lot of fun.
For this. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. This is a arcade fighting game, sort of tabletop game where you're playing with cards, just back and forth, back and forth. There's a lot of I'm going to attack, and then you get a chance to defend. The switch rolls back and forth until someone doesn't have any health. And it really does, I have to say, it's a very straightforward, simple game, but it does capture that feeling. If you've ever played old, Street Fighter or those side-scrolling fighting games, it really does capture that feeling of oh, you ducked and blocked right when I was doing this one attack. And you're basically foiling the person's attacks, or maybe not, and taking a bunch of damage.
When you're putting all your button combinations in like you would in the game, and all of the cards are either joystick movements or buttons. So that's a lot of the fun for me, is throwing down your combo. It's up YY, down up A. And it has that feeling of inputting those commands in the controller to get those special moves to trigger. Of course, like David said, your opponent is throwing and blocking and dodging and all this kind of stuff. And it is about a 20-minute game.
Yeah,
so
it's super fast. We played it,
we played
3 times.
3 games
3
in an
times
hour.
in one live stream. This is also from Manny Tremblay, part of the Dice Throne team and the illustrator and artist for all of that. So the game also looks really good. So if you like the art from something like Dice Throne, you're going to like the way this one looks,
and
too.
not to mention that this is the brand new game from a brand new studio that is being acquired by Chip Theory Games.
Yeah, kind of big news
Neon
for them.
Knights. So that is huge. So this is, Manny did Roth already for them, but he's back now with the first of probably a couple Neon games for Neon Knights, which is really cool. So we do have a few more that we wanted to talk about, but before we did, we're bringing back another special guest today. This is a new friend of the channel. It's Board Game Ninja.
Hello and welcome to Board Game Ninja. It's great to be a guest here at Man vs. Meeple, so thanks for having us. We could talk at length about Core of Discovery by Jay Cormier and San-Fung Lim. Stretch goals unlocked so far have been new maps that add to the replayability, new expansions, and we love the deduction puzzles that this game presents. They might prove to be a step up from the excellent Mind Management by the same authors. You can actually get the deluxe versions of Mind Management and Harrow County with this Kickstarter. And that is interesting because they can be hard to come by on this side of the Atlantic. Or we could talk to you about Fado by Vita Lacerda, for example, because it looks amazing and we like the idea of a lighter gallerist. But there is one particular Kickstarter that has really piqued our interest this week, and that is for a variety of reasons. We're talking about Orange Shall Overcome, a game by Marcel Keuler. The base game of Orange Shall Overcome came out a few years ago. Now there is a new Kickstarter, but not just for a reprint in English and Dutch. A new expansion will be added to the game with 2 new missions to complete, lots of new cards, new characters and modules that can be added to any game. Orange Shall Overcome is set in the Netherlands during World War II, when the country was occupied by the Nazis. Citizens from all walks of life joined the resistance, and in this cooperative game you get to play one of them. Interestingly, the game is based on true events. One of those events is when a group of resistance fighters here in Amsterdam tried to blow up and burn down the population register in 1943 in order to hinder the Nazi efforts. Most resistance fighters were captured and killed in the weeks following this attack, including a family member of one of us here at Board Game Ninja. This game promises thrilling stories, lots of suspense and engaging puzzles that once had serious real-life consequences because they were once a matter of life and death. And to bring this segment full circle again, one of the advisors for the gameplay of Orange Shall Overcome was Jay Cormier, of Core of Discovery. All the more reason for us to check it out. Once again, thanks for having us on Man vs. Meeple. Have a great day. Bye!
All right, and we're back with 2 more that we wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about Kinfire Council, not Kinfire Chronicles. This is not a sequel or an expansion or anything to do with the original game, other than that this is just a brand new game that takes place in that same world, which is something they're kind of focusing on. They had Chronicles, they had that Delve series.
Yeah, this is more of a Euro.
And now this is a Euro-y worker placement board game that will probably remind you of Lords of Waterdeep. You are playing as council members in one of the cities in the world of Kinfire Chronicles. I don't remember the exact name of the world, but you're controlling the city. And it is a worker placement game. You're trying to, place your workers and complete tasks in order to accrue the most benefit for yourself, the most victory points to win the game, while also having to kind of defend the city from attacks, which almost feels like a semi-cooperative, at least like people are trying to hey, somebody has to go
something
do these
everyone
fights, right?
has to do.
And there's some negotiation happening at the table, but the real crux of the game, the thing that I think makes it very interesting, is that every round you're going to be able to vote on new rules that will change the game. And so you're trying to position yourself in a way to vote for the rules that are going to help your strategy or positively impact you. Of course, you're wanting to kind of manipulate the table, and there's that whole table talk element of hey, if you vote, I really want this rule, maybe next round I'll vote for the rule that benefits you. So,
or we can't let Ryan have this rule, everybody.
Right. This is going to really help him. Everybody needs to work together. So there is that evolving table talk element. Of course, we haven't played the game, so
Jeremy has, though. Jeremy Howard actually has content up on the channel. He did a full preview, and if you've ever watched his stuff, he goes pretty deep in these things. So if you want more information on the game, definitely check that out.
He's the one that got me into Kinfire Chronicles to begin with and got me sucked into this world.
He's a fan.
So
he's a fan.
He is definitely a fan. And this, again, another design from Kevin Wilson, who is their primary designer, has designed Netrunner, Arkham. He has designed just a ton of games. So this is him coming back to his Euro roots. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, and speaking of us being fans of games and designers specifically, the last one we want to talk about is House of Fado.
Yeah.
This is from Vital Lacerda, and he has a co-designer on this one, but this is part of that sort of series that he's doing with Eagle Griffin Games that are sort of lighter, redesigned versions of games, or at least inspired by some of his bigger games. This one is got sort of the big sibling is the Gallerist.
Yep.
So the big element that this shares with that is the whole concept of bumping worker placement. So when you place a worker, if there's a worker already there of someone else's, they get bumped to another space. Emily and I recently just played this. In fact, we also have content up on the channel for this one, so if you want a little bit more detailed information, check that out. But this is definitely a more simplified version.
Well, yeah, like Bot Factory or like Mercado de Lisboa, just that core mechanic kind of condensed down.
Yeah, we played this a couple times, and probably even more so than what we felt with Bot Factory and Kanban. And it is really interesting, though. The theme is really interesting because you have these restaurants and you're hiring these musicians, these Fado musicians, to come into your restaurant, perform for customers. You're going to increase the fame of those musicians, but the musicians kind of come and go.
Yeah,
You can promote them.
Kind of like in the gallery.
Yeah, they are the art, if you
Yep,
will, from the
right.
gallerist, and there is that economy and that same sort of thing going on. But check out House of Fado. Check out our content on it if you'd like. But that is all we have for this week on Crowd Control.
Yeah.
We will be back probably next week. We've got a pretty big May and June of content coming up.
Hitting a lot of big campaigns this summer.
There's a lot of
for
campaigns
sure.
coming up this summer, so be sure to come back for another Crowd Control. Until then, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we will see you then.